Welcome back to Data to Decisions. In today's video, we will take raw data from website espn.com. As you see on the screen on the left side, this is the NFL schedule for the 2023 season in a grid format. We're going to use that data, bring it into Excel, and then create what you see on the right side, which is a visual using logos. And all of this is going to be created dynamically. And we're going to use some very simple Excel formulas to actually create this visual. So now let's get started. So now for the first part of the video, we're going to focus on extracting the data from the website. So for that first, we need the URL from which we can extract the data. So I'm going to go to the NFL schedule grid page. And so I'm going to copy this URL and I'm going to go back to our blank workbook. And now we are ready to go and get the data from the website. So we're going to go to the data ribbon from web, and then I'm going to go and paste that URL which I copied, and then hit OK. And now Excel is going to go and grab the data that it can grab from the website, and it's going to tell us what it found. And then what we're looking for is a table format, right? So the tables are going to be the best format for us to extract the data and pull it into Excel and do our own calculations. So let's see what it finds as soon as it detects it, and it's going to give us the data. There we go. So now all we see is this document and table 0. I'm going to click on table 0, and this shows me that this is the table that it was able to find, and this is exactly what we wanted. However, we do have to make a few modifications. The first thing it immediately jumps to us is that the column names have to be changed. I don't know what the first row, NFL schedule grid, it's repeated again and again. So there are a few modifications we need to do. So in such cases, always go for the transform data option instead of loading it already directly. So I'll go to transform data. This is where Excel will open the Power Query window. It might open in my other monitor. So let's wait and see what it does. But it's going to open it in a separate window and not in this sheet view. So once it opens it in Power Query, it provides us some tools for us to actually manipulate the data, modify the data, transform the data, shape the data the way we want it. This is the Power Query window. It opened up again for me. And you can see that it already applied some steps. So what are these steps? So the first thing is, if you remember, we put the URL, pasted it. That is the first step. That is what it says. Source, it went to this URL. So that is basically the first step. Second step is navigating it to the specific table, table 0, and pull all the data from that table. So that's the second step. This third step is something that Excel will try to do automatically to say, okay, I'm going to make them as text columns, and some of them are, if it's a number, it'll convert it into a numeric column and all that. So it's basically applying the data types. For us, the key thing is we have to make sure that we only keep 32 rows of data, because if you remember the NFL teams, there are 32. So we want to make sure that there are 32 rows. Right now, there are 34 rows. And so we want to first make sure we clean it up. So first thing I'm going to do is to remove the first row. So I'm going to go to here, remove rows, remove top rows, and I will inform Excel to remove the first row. So I'll put 1 because that's the number of rows that I wanted to remove. Then I want to use my first row now as the headers or the column names or the field names. So I'm going to use this option to say use the first row as headers. So now this promotes the first row as headers. So now we have 32 rows, which is exactly what we want. You can see in the bottom left, 32 rows. So this is great. And then as I scan across through the columns, I see that the first column is a team name, and then I have 18 columns. Because there are 18 weeks during NFL regular season, there are 18 columns. That also looks right. There are only two things that otherwise stood out to me here. One is, first of all, let's understand how to read this table, right? So this is an extremely important step in a journey of data to decisions. You want to make sure you understand what each row in a table means. So in this case, the team name. So let's use the first row to understand. So Arizona is the first team. And in week one, it is playing at Washington. In week two, it is playing against New York Giants, but they are playing at home, so at Arizona. Third week, they play Dallas at Arizona. So basically, whenever you see an at symbol that represents like it's a road game for the team, so they have to go to Washington and play. And then in week four, they have to go to San Francisco and play. So the schedule adds that at symbol in front of the team abbreviation, which is a little bit tricky when we will start writing formulas. Sometimes there is an at symbol, sometimes it's not. So this is something that we have to remember. The next thing is, as in an NFL season, even though there are 18 weeks in a season, every team plays 17 games. So there is a bye week or a rest week. So every team will have a bye week. So Arizona, for example, has a bye week in week number 14. So BYE is actually not a team, it's a bye. So we have to keep in mind that there are 32 teams, so 32 abbreviations. And then you will also find bye as a value, and then you'll find at symbol in front of abbreviation sometimes. So these are the nuances of the data that we are observing and exploring, and we have to remember when we write formulas later. And the 18 weeks, and every team has 18 weeks of data. One of them will be a buy. So now we can get a sense of what the scheduled data is structured and how we can start using it. So we are good to go. And the final thing I would do is just to call it a different name. So I'll call it grid. And then I will do close and load. So what is happening now is Power Query is actually finalizing all the things, like, for example, we uh, remove the top row and all that. So it's basically applying those, and then it's going to load it into a table in a new sheet that will be created right here for us in this work. Once it's created, it will also create it as a table by default. And so since we didn't change any of the defaults, it's going to create it as a table with the name grid, which is the name that we gave. So, and then there should be 32 rows in that data when it's loaded. And once it's finished, then it's just like another table. Um, we can we can add more columns, we can write formulas against it and all that. So now we have 32 rows loaded and we have this table ready. And as I said, the sheet is named grid. The table is also named grid. If you see in the table design ribbon, it says grid. So everything is good so far. Now it's time for us to move to the second part of the video, which is about dynamically creating logos. So for this, I want to first show you on the website, on the ESPN.com. If I can go back, I found that I found that the logos are stored in this format, in this URL structure. This is the URL structure for Arizona Cardinals. You will see that after the 500 slash, there is an ARI as the abbreviation for the team. So if I change this to, I don't know, DAL, and then hit enter, I get Dallas. So I can use the structure to go back and dynamically pull for all the 32 teams instead of manually doing it. So I'm going to go into our workbook again. And this time I'm going to go, let's say I start with column U here, and I'm going to say equals, and I'm going to use the image function, open parenthesis, and I'm going to put the URL that we had. So instead of putting it directly, I would do double quotes and then paste the URL. And enable. That's the security thing. In this case, I'm just pulling it from ESPN.com, and then I closed it with the double quotes, and I'm going to close the parenthesis for the image function and hit enter. So now I got the Dallas logo, and that's because this is hard coded to Dallas. But if I want it for Arizona, I will have to change it. So instead of changing it one by one. So what I'm going to do is to introduce um, another parameter or part of the function. I will close the double quotes after the slash and then put an ampersand. And then I want to use the value in column A. So I'm going to click on that. And then I will do ampersand again. So remember that now the ARI will be passed through this. So I'm going to hit OK, didn't like it. And that's because we closed, after the slash, we closed the double quotes. And then we use the team abbreviation. Now I have to again open the double quotes and then say dot .png and all that stuff at the end. I will close again. So now I got Arizona. And if I actually drag, I get all the logos. So that's how simple it is. And we can play with the row height and the column widths according to our needs. So let me make sure if I can make it a little bit bigger. And then this one, column width, let's say I stick with 8, or let's say 7. There we go. And I can also center it. So I can select all the values and then do center. That centers it. Now, in order for me to build the logos for all the teams in the schedule, I can use the same concept, right? And then I will take this and let's say, for example, instead of this, I can say B2 and hit OK. So what is in V2 is at Washington. So here is where having the at symbol creates a problem for us because there is no image named at with at WSH. So I have to basically remove the at symbol. So I will use a simple substitute function in front of the P2. And now I'm going to say if there is an at symbol, replace it with nothing. Okay, so I'll hit enter and I'll explain how this works. And then okay. Now, what we did was instead of just saying B2, which is where the abbreviation comes from, I said substitute B2 whenever it's you see at the rate symbol, replace it with blank, which is like replace it with nothing. It will remove at symbol basically. So now with that change, now we can get all the, so let's just check a couple of things. So Washington, let's say that the Baltimore is Houston and I can see the Houston Texans. So basically it is working fine. The one thing that we will have to figure out is the buy. When there is a buy, what do you do? So before we do that, let me just do freeze pane. So I'm clicking here, going to the view and then freeze pane. So this is just so that I can scroll and we can still see everything. Okay. Now I want 18 weeks. So there are many ways to do it. I will do a sequence. I want one row, 18 columns. It automatically puts me the 18 columns. I will do a column width of 7 to be consistent with others. Now, if I apply this formula to all the weeks and all the teams by selecting everything, going into the edit mode of the formula by just clicking inside the formula and hit Control Enter. So when you do that, the formula is going to be applied to all the cells. So this is great. I mean, it looks a lot better, but I still see some where there are issues or errors. And that's because those are by weeks, basically the weeks where we don't have a team abbreviation, so you don't have a logo. So a very simple if b2 equals by, then don't even try the image function, just leave it blank, give me nothing back, and then close parenthesis. So now that's my new formula. I once again go and select all the cells and then go into the edit formula by clicking inside the formula, control enter. So that will apply the formula. So we have the logo, all the logos applied correctly. And one last thing, if you want to do uh, identify the road games with a different color, so a simple trick would be I would select all these cells again, and then because we know which ones are road games, right? Because there is an at symbol in front of it. So I'm going to use that and put it into a conditional formatting rule, new rule. So remember that I've selected all the logos where I want the rule to be applied. That's extremely important. What cells you select before you open this conditional formatting operation. So I'm going to go and say use a formula to determine which cells to format. I will do equals left of B2. So the reason why I'm doing B2 is even though we are applying the color formatting to column V and after, the logic stays there in column B to S. That is where the at symbol is. So I'm going to use that to color these columns. So that's why we refer to B2. So left of B2, comma 1. This function will take and extract the first character from that value, from that cell. So if that first character is equals the at the rate symbol, then it's a road game. So apply a different, format. So I can do a little blue. Okay, okay. So now Excel will apply that formula, to all the cells. And now you have all the road games highlighted with blue. So similarly, you can do different colors or borders, however you want to display, but this works fine for me. So what we have done in this video is extracted raw data from ESPN.com, brought that in, cleaned it up a little bit, understood, explored the data, understood the nuances, and then we created a grid which looks a lot um, better from a visual perspective rather than the table structure. Now you have uh, a much better looking from an aesthetics perspective. And this technique that we learned about using the image function to dynamically extract the data and create the logos will save a lot of time. And this could also be applied regardless of where the image is, wherever it's stored. As long as it's stored in a specific pattern, we can automate this like this using a very simple formula. If you remember, all of this was using this one formula that we applied to all the cells to dynamically generate this appearance. So again, even though we're talking about this sports topic and the focus is more on the techniques that we are using here can be applied to a lot of different scenarios. And what I try to do is to make sure that the technique that we learn is clear enough so that we can apply it to a lot of different business scenarios in your workplace. So here, for example, the final output will be an interactive little widget type of visual that can be part of dashboards where I can, interact with it to actually, for example, get the weekly schedule. So every week, which teams are playing where, and I can have images or logos automatically dynamically appear. And it can have any number of games. Sometimes it's 16 games, sometimes 15, sometimes 13. So it's dynamic. And the same thing on if I want to see the schedule for a 32 teams, and I can click on any specific team and see their schedule dynamically. So this is the effect that we are going after finally. But in order for us to get there, we have to do the groundwork, which is to take the data, the schedule data, which is available in the structure of a grid, and then convert it first of all into detailed list of games. So there are, ultimately this table, for example, we will end up with 304 rows of data, including the buy, but we will have every team playing the game and then the total number of games, and then we will also have the buy. And we can easily filter the buys out separately to actually arrive at total number of games in the NFL regular season. So the first thing is to structure the data, and then we will also bring in the standings data. So for each team, what is their record right now? How many losses? So we will use this. The reason why we are bringing it in is if you remember in our final output in the schedules, we will be displaying their record. So in order, this is again just to illustrate how we can bring two separate tables of data, and then we are going to be able to combine them and create a more unified visual which pulls the data together and then makes the output dynamic. So now this is where we stopped, where we already loaded the grid data into a table via Power Query. So I'm going to right click on the grid connections and hit edit. And we're going to go into the Power Query editor again. And this time, what we're going to do is to not edit the grid query, but I'm going to right click on the left side panel. We'll do the right click on the query and say reference. And this is because I don't want to change that query, but I want to create something from it. So I'm going to call this as the games because my goal is that at the end of these steps, I want to be able to have all the games as individual rows of data. Right now, it is all in a grid format. So the first thing I'm going to do is to click on the team column and then say unpivot all other columns. And now what happens is Let's just take an example to understand how this works. If I go to my previous step of source, Arizona in week one was playing at Washington and week two against New York. So let me go to the next step. Arizona, week one plays at Washington, week two in New York Giants. So basically the columns became rows, which is what we want. We want everything to be rows. And now there are 576 rows. The 576 rows is nothing but 32 teams, 18 weeks of data. So 32 times 18 will give you 576. But what we want is also to make sure that, you know, the same game should not be appearing multiple times. So let's take an example of Arizona playing against Atlanta in week 10. But if I go to row 28, Atlanta plays Arizona in week 10. So it's basically the same game appearing two times. So I want to make sure that one game appears only once. And so that is the count that we want. So basically everything should become half. So 576, we would be dividing it by 2 in order to get there. And then we will still have bye week. So anyway, we'll deal with that later. But first thing is, how do I make a single game into a single row instead of two rows? Let's start creating some columns first. I want to first of all know which is the home team and then the away team. So I want to capture both in one row. So right now, for example, Arizona plays at Washington. So in this case, Washington is the home team, Arizona is the away team. So how do I do it? Custom column. And we're going to write a formula to say which is the home team. So if there is a function called text starts with, let me use that. Text starts with, if, for example, the value column, comma, if it starts with the at symbol, what does it mean? If it starts with the at symbol, they are playing at Washington. Washington is a home team. So I want to use the value column, but I want to remove the at symbol. So we will use another function called text.range. And this time in the value column, offset by 1. So basically, I don't want the at symbol. Okay. And it'll all be clear once it is done. We will take a look at the examples. What if it doesn't start with an and? Then who's the home team? So let's take the second row. Arizona plays against New York Giants, but who's the home team? Arizona. So in this case, team is the team, the value in the team column is the home team. So that's it. So let's say, okay, let's test it out. So home team for the first game is Washington. The second game is Arizona. So clearly that's working. So let's do another one for away team or the away team. This time we will use the same function text starts with, right? Text starts with, and this time if there is an at symbol, we've already know who the home team is, but who should be the away team. So if this starts with an at symbol, then the away team is the team. So I'm going to say there's a lot of teams here, but it's the team column. And then what if it doesn't start with it? So let's take the second row. The Arizona playing against New York Giants at Arizona. So who's the away team? The value column. So I'm going to choose the value column. And again, we'll test it like before. First row, Washington is the home team, Arizona is the away team. And then the Arizona playing New York Giants. Arizona is the home team. New York Giants is the away team. So basically, we are now able to bring it into one row, home and away team side by side. So that's good, but we still have 576 rows, right? So before we start figuring out how to reduce the number of rows, there's one more column that I want to add, which is I would call it like matchup or whatever the game is, right? So this is basically who's playing against who. And I will do a simple home team. I'll just do a dash as a concatenate it with our away team, and then this is just saying, okay, Washington, Arizona. So the home team hyphen away team. Okay, simple. Now this will help us actually do remove all the duplicate values, right? So let's watch out for this. Row number 10, Arizona, Atlanta. Row number 28, Arizona, Atlanta. These two are the same, it's the same game. So they have the same value in the matchup column. So now I can select the matchup column and I say remove duplicates. So watch out for the bottom left. There are 576 rows. As soon as I remove the duplicates, it becomes 304 rows. And it is 304 rows because we have 32 teams. They all have bye. And so that's adding up. So there is not really 304 games being played because this includes bye. So for example, row number 14, Arizona bye. So this is something that if I really don't want buys in my data set, I can actually filter them away easily by going to the away team column. And if I remove the buys from here, okay, remove it, okay, now I get 272 rows. So this is the actual number of games that are being played. This is the actual number of NFL games played during the regular season, 272. But for some purposes, I think, which we will see later in this video, having the buy records is helpful. So I don't want to remove the buys, but I'm just trying to illustrate that if you remove the buys, you will get exactly the number of the NFL regular season. So I'm going to remove the filter. We don't want to do it. So now we have the table of games. So I can go and say close and load. This will load it into our worksheet as a new sheet, call games, and then it'll create a table, call games with 304 rows. So that's basically what we need to get to convert the grid data into a series of games or records as games. So there you have it, 304 rows loaded into the games table in the game sheet. Go and start pulling the standings data. So let's go to the data tab from web, and I already copied the URL from espn.com. So I'm going to just paste it here and hit OK. And this is where it goes and opens the Power Query editor for us. Excel will open the Power Query editor for us to pull the data from espn.com specific URL, what kind of data Excel is able to find. We are looking for a table of standings of each team. So there should be 32 rows of data and each team, how many games they've lost and won and all that. So if I click on table 0, I see that there is the data on each team, win, loss, and everything. I know that it looks okay, but let's always go into the transform data so that we can take a closer look at all the columns and all the rows. And before we decide if we need to do any kind of cleanup or modification or manipulation, before we bring it into this sheet and start using it for our dashboards and other purposes. So here we have the Power Query editor open, and we have the name of the query is table 0. So maybe I'll change this to standings because that is what it represents. And then I'm going to quickly look at it. There are 32 rows, so that makes sense. We have 32 rows. And then we have the number of wins, number of losses, ties, win percentage, the record at home, record in away, and all of that. So it all looks fine. The one thing that stands out for me is the team name is not really that clean. So it has a lot of information in front of the team name, whether they qualified already for the playoffs, whether they've clinched the division and all that. That's going to cause us some problems later. But anyway, we'll do some cleanup in once we load the data in. That is the only thing that stands out for me. It might be a little bit tricky here um, to use this directly. We have to do some cleanup, but I'm going to do that in Excel, not in Power Query. So I'm going to close and load, and this will load the 32 rows into the standings table in a new sheet that will be created right now called standings. The The trick that we're going to learn or we're going to apply here is how do you take that not random, but it's like a mixed structure of data in the team column. It has the abbreviation at the end, it has the full name in the middle, and it has the some other characters at the beginning. And it's very, very different for each team. So you see a Z in front of Dallas and Detroit, but you see an X in front of Miami, and sometimes you may see E, and I think this keeps changing because today is actually Sunday. They are actually playing the games, and when you extracted the data in the morning, it looked different. But anyway, point here is that when you come across data in your organization like this, where it's not following a specific pattern, but you still want to extract meaningful data out of it, that's what we're going to learn in this video. So I'm going to go and first extract the team abbreviation. But if you remember, all of our previous data, where we actually listed all the games, they're all three-letter abbreviation of the teams. That's what we want. So I'm going to the standings table, and let's say I want to get the last three letters from the first column. I didn't even rename the column. It just says column one because we're not going to use it directly. We're going to convert it first. So let's say I pick the last three characters. Immediately something is wrong because I see San Francisco has only two letters. And so let's go back to the grid or the games and see San Francisco is actually, yeah, two letters. So there are some teams which have two letter abbreviation like Green Bay, Kansas City, Las Vegas, New England, New Orleans, San Francisco, Tampa Bay. So it's not always consistent. It's not always three characters. So that brings us to the point, the key focus of this video is how do I clean that up? A technique that I am going to use here is making use of the fact that every alphabet or every character has a code value. So for example, I'm going to use, we do it, let's just do A, B, C, D, and then I'm going to say Z. So code of A is 97, okay? And then a code of Z is 122. But what about if it is capital A or capital B or capital C and capital D? So I'm gonna try and see if, so capital A is 65 and capital Z is actually, I should have done there, 90. So the takeaway here is that uppercase or capital letters A to Z, code value is 65 to 90. Okay. So the reason why this is going to be useful here is we want to pick the last two or three characters from the column one. How do I know whether it's two or three? Of course, there are many different ways to do it. One way would be if I can identify only the uppercase letters from the right. So for example, for San Francisco, S, F are uppercase, and then the other S is actually not. So I want to only bring the characters where there are uppercase, right? Uppercase characters A to Z have a code value of 65 to 90. So if I write another formula, let's say here, and this one would be if the code value of this text, let's even before I write the if function, let's just do code. Okay. So let's see what it comes back. 66. So Baltimore, B is 66. San Francisco, the lowercase s is 115. So it's above the 90 limit that we have. So clearly this is different. And then Kansas City, and then Tampa Bay, Green Bay. So all of these, you can see that they have an S at the end. I mean, that's just coincidence that they all end up with S. But Las Vegas and New England Patriots, everything ends with S. But the point is that they are lowercase, and so code value will not be between 65 and 90. So what I want to make sure is if the code value right, is greater than or equal to 65. And so to do the and multiple conditions, I usually do is if start with an and function. If the code is greater than or equal to 65, comma, code less than or equal to 90. Now do a comma. So if both are true, then it is actually three characters should be used. Use the entire column value. Otherwise, I would want to skip the first digit. So I will do right of this, comma 2. So you'll see what the results are. So I've closed the right and I've closed the if condition. Okay. So now you see what happens is San Francisco SSF becomes SF, Kansas City becomes Kansas City, and all of that. So another thing we want to make sure is we check whether this is correct. So I will do a quick match function and say the value that we have created now, go and check it in the, I don't know, in the, which one should we, okay, let's do the grid. Grid has a unique list of team at abbreviations. So I'm going to just say, go to the grid, look for in the team column, comma 0. Now we do have the values populate. My computer has been very slow today. But if you don't see the numbers come back, that means that it is not able to find the these values in our official list of team attributes, team abbreviations. So clearly we got everything matching. So 1 to 32 teams, they're all here. And then the three character teams and the two character team names, they're all correctly coming through. Just to recap, the main point of this video was not only extracting the data from ESPN.com, but we cleaned it up, taking the data from the first column, converted into the last three characters, found out that there is an issue with the some teams having two character abbreviations, and then we used the code value and code function in order to determine which ones are 3 versus 2. And then we used a simple write function to extract only the 2 or 3 characters. So that's what we did. Now we have the data cleaned up. Now we can further use it to create the dashboards that we want. So let's go to an empty sheet and start creating the visuals that we want to enable the user select a specific week number, and we want them to be able to see that week specific schedule of games. Okay, so what I'm going to first do is I'll rename the sheet as weekly schedule or week schedule. And then I'm going to have a helper sheet or help sheet where first I want to list all the number of weeks. So 18 rows, one column, it gives me this. And I want to build a pivot table on this. So I'll build a pivot table. Maybe I'll put it in the same sheet. And here, I don't have the name of this table. So if I drag this in, it's not going to work. So I will have to redo this. So go back to the pivot table, change your data source, and start from here. So if I had done that correctly in the first step, it would have saved me this rework. But basically, you need the name of the column and then 18 weeks. And so I have created a pivot table out of that, and then we do a slicer. We have kind of walked through this approach in a previous video about how to build interactive visuals based on slicers. So that's why I'm kind of going faster on this. We'll put a link to the more detailed, elaborate video on this topic. So I have now created a slicer. The slicer, when you click on it, the first row value will be here in 26. So I'm going to click on this cell. Again, where you do in the workbook, which column, it doesn't matter. But wherever you put the pivot table, make sure you name that. So instead of E26, I'm going to call it week select. Okay. And you can call it according to your preferences. I'm calling it week selected. So now let's check this. Let's go back to the week schedule. And let's bring our slicer cut. I selected it and I pressed Control X to cut the slicer, and then I will go here and then Control V to paste it. So now I have the slicer and I can change. I want it to have 9 columns and 2 rows because there are 18 weeks of NFL regular season. So now we have a slicer. Now what I'm going to do is if you remember, we named it as week selected, right? So equals week selected. We want to see if it's working. So if I click 2, it should be 2. So now I know which week the user is selecting. This is great. Now let's start building the formula. So we don't need to show this week. I'm deleting that value there. But now first thing, let's do which team is the away team, right? We are going to have every week we may have 13 games, 16 games, 15 games. We don't know. I think the maximum will be 16, but it can be fewer too. So we need to build this keeping in mind that there'll be 16 possible rows of data, 16 possible games in every single week. So if I'm going to just name it as there's an away team, there's going to be a home team, and then we will build a logo for the home and away team here, and then we will show the record of the two teams playing. Okay, so this is what we want to do. The first thing is away team. Let's understand first the data that we have in the games table, right? So I go to the games table. In the games table, if I want to bring a specific set of rows where the week is um, equal to the week selected. So the week column is actually labeled here as attribute in the games table. That was a miss on my part. I should have named it as week. It's basically the week number, and it should be uh, a numeric value, and it looks like it is a text value. So the first thing I'm going to do is before I write the formula, let me go into the games table, right? So go and edit. And I want to make sure that it is in a numeric column because that's the right way to do it because it's a number and I'm just going to make it change type as a whole number and I will also rename it as V. Okay, so this is the list of all games. So I'm gonna again do close and load. So this will apply the changes we have made, and now we will have the week. So as it's loading, the concept that we're trying to apply here is when the user selects the slicer, let's say they selects week 1, the week selected value will become 1. And now I want to take that and apply it to filter this table and say where the week equals the week selected, give me all the rows of data because those are the games that are played in that week. Pretty straightforward. So let's apply that approach. Now it's applied the name, change the week, and it's a number now. Everything is good. So go back, filter the games table. So if I take the entire games table, I only want the away team, right? So which is the away team? So the away team is games away team. And can I get specifically the rows where so the games week equals the week selected, right? So the value that we already saved. So let's see what happens here. So what I'm saying is give me the away team value where the week equals week selected. Okay, so it automatically gives me all the away teams during that week. And there are 16 games. So let's click on another random thing. So now I get 19 values. That doesn't make sense. Why would I get 19? And that's because there are 3 teams, or there are actually 2 teams having bye, 3, 4, 5 teams having buys during that. There are 14 teams playing, but this doesn't make sense in the sense that the buy entries should not be coming in here because that increases the number beyond what is possible. So what I need to do is to make sure that the buy values are excluded. So I go back to my filter and this time I will open and close for the game week equals week selected. And then I will multiply, open parenthesis, games away team, right? Um, not equals to by, okay? The important thing here is that we are putting two conditions and we want both to be satisfied. So I'm putting an asterisk, or so I'm making sure that both are true. Only then give me the value. So I will close my filter function and enter. Now I get a lot fewer records. So this is 13 games in that week. So 13 games, and then we have um, let's say next time in week 8 we have 16 games, and then we have 15 games, and so on. So basically we're able to get the away team, and so I can apply the same logic to get um, from for the home as well. So I can take this, copy it, go in here, and then in this case I want, instead of the away team, I want the home team. Hit OK. So now I have the two away and home team lists. The next thing is I want to get the logo. So we already learned how to get the logo from a grid structure. So I'm going to try to steal that formula which we had here and copy it. And if you want to know more about that specific formula, please check out the previous video, which we explained everything in detail in that video. So I'm going to paste the formula here, and immediately everything is wrong because we're just pasting it exactly the same formula from the other sheet. We have to modify it. Will we have a by now? Because we already removed the by, so I don't expect the by's to come up in this data. So I'm going to remove that portion of the formula which is not relevant. The important thing here is the image URL, and then within the image URL, we want to make sure we pass this abbreviation for the team. So I've done it. I'm not going to change anything else. It's just 11. And it says there is a typo. And the typo was because there was an extra close parenthesis. So that got removed. So that's clean. So if I go ahead and do this, this is a dynamic array. So I can change the D11 to D11 hash, and it will automatically put the formulas too. So I can take the same thing, copy, go into here, paste, and this time instead of D11, I want to take it from G, which is the home team, and there we have it. So we have now the logos automatically done in a single formula. Great. So now we have the logos here, logos there. Actually, it should have the record. I should put the logos there. Sorry about that. So I'm going to copy, put the logo there, and I will remove it from here. Now, to finish it up, we need the records can be pulled from a simple X lookup function, where I can take the abbreviation from the home, go into the standings table, and look up the team abbreviation column, comma, and bring back the record. So what is the record? So they have winning percentage. They don't have the record, so I'm just going to use the win columns, okay? And then bring me do an ampersand, double quotes, hyphen, double quotes, ampersand, and then bring back the losses column. Okay, so we can do that too easily. And then I'm going to close parenthesis and okay. So now I get the record for the Los Angeles Rams. So here I can also go and instead of G11, if I do G11 hash, now this will do a dynamic array, so I don't have to worry about how many games. So that's the nice thing about the dynamic arrays, because in seventh week, we only have these many games. In sixth, we have more. In eighth, we have more. So when it expands, these formulas automatically expands, and we don't have to do any extra work to clean it up. Same thing, just like we did the record for the home team, I can use copy the formula and paste it here. Doesn't work because I need to point it to the away team, abbreviation. So I click on D11, put a hash, that gives me this. So let's go and check again. This is G11 pointing to the home team. This one is pointing to the away team. So now we have everything. We can do a versus if I want. And again, the rest of the stuff is all just formatting, how you want to format this. So you always going to maximum is 16 games. So I want to make sure that accommodate. So in this case, for example, there are 16 games in week 8. So this is the maximum it's going to have. So I can just right click this and then maybe, make it a little bit taller. And then I can do some conditional formatting. So for example, I'm going to select all these and then I will do go to conditional formatting, new rule. And if I wanted like a banded rows kind of design, I can do is even row of C11 first, the beginning of this schedule. So if that is an even row, then you do a different formatting. So maybe I'll do a pattern with this and hit OK. OK. I'm missing something here. Oh, yeah, I need to put another close parenthesis. There you have it. So now you have and if I don't need this, okay, put it up. There we go. So an interactive slicer, which you can use to bring the schedule dynamically along with the logo. We also did a lookup to pull the record, win-loss record for the team, right? So, and again, if you don't need to show this, you can do it. Or I remember that one of the things we could do is I can insert a column here and make that at symbol, right? So I can do a if there is a team here, right? If it's blank, leave it blank. Otherwise, put the at symbol, okay? And I can do it with hash. That is dynamic too. So now I can center this and I don't need it to be this wide. So I can make it maybe 3 or something like that. And these two need to be centered. Okay, so there you have it. So these are very simple techniques that we used. In this case, let's see, I'm not sure whether the images are coming through in the same size. That's what I'm checking. So let's put 7 as the width, and we can play with the row height here. So let's say make it 30. So this makes it a lot bigger. Again, depends on the purpose of how you're going to use it. If I'm going to go into full screen mode, I can now see, for example, the logos much more clearly. There you have it. Very simple techniques. We can create these type of interactive visuals, dynamic visuals, using some very simple Excel technique. Now, there is also one more set of data which we didn't cover too much in previously, but basically this is a list of all the teams and then which conference they belong to, which division they are, and then the team abbreviation. Okay, so I'm just going to call this maybe team division sheet for now. Now we will be building this team schedule, which is the interactive slicer based team schedule. So I'm going to just first mark the canvas here. Now, before we start doing this interactive visual, we need to make sure that the slicers are set up. So this is where I will go and create a new help sheet, help for slicer. You can name it however you would like. But what I want here is a list of distinct team abbreviations, which we will use for our slicer. So I will do unique from, let's say we have the team division, so I can use the team abbreviation. I can also use the team name if I want that to be my slicer, but I'm going to use the abbreviation. It gives me this list and I want to make sure I sort it. So by this way, I can make sure it's alphabetical. And now using this, I'm just clicking somewhere inside this dynamic array and then do insert pivot table. And then I want to insert the pivot table right here and then hit OK. And now I think there is a little bit of mistake once again I made. So in the pivot table, I want to change the data to change the data source. And then I want to make sure the C3 is selected, right? Because that is the column header. And now in the pivot table, when I come down here, I can now drag the team abbreviation. And now this gives me this thing. Now, everything is good. We have done some more detailed videos on this technique, so I'm kind of going fast on this. But I will do a slicer on this pivot table. And the slicer will be used to actually filter. So as I click on it, you will see that this changes. What we need to do is to make sure we give a name to this. I like to give a name to the cell. Instead of C39, I'll give it as team selected. Okay, now we are done with it. So I'm going to take this slicer, click on it, cut by pressing Control X. And now we will go to the team schedule, open canvas, Control V to paste the slicer. So we have the slicer now, and I can control the slicer to have, let's say, 8 columns and 4 rows because we have 32 teams. So let's say, for example, something like this. Nice. Now, when somebody clicks on this, the team selected is going to be automatically picking up that value. That's great. Now, I need to use that value to filter to the games that are played by that team by week, right? So the first thing I'm going to do is to go and say filter from the games um, table. So we have all these values, right? So let's say just to keep things simple, I'm bringing the whole thing here. Okay, so filter the entire games table, but only do it for the team that I am interested in. So in order to do so, we will use the search function. Search, what text am I searching for? That is the team selected text. That's basically the team abbreviation, right? And then comma, where am I searching? I'm searching in this matchup column. I want to search in the matchup column. So games, open brackets, square brackets, matchup, close, and I close the search function. Now the search will give me back a number if it finds that value. So let's say, for example, the user has selected CAR for Carolina. Now, if it finds CAR in the matchup column, search function will give back a number. But if it doesn't find it, it returns an error. So what we need to do is to make sure that if there is any error, consider it like zero. Okay. What is my filter condition? I want that value to be found, that text value to be found. If it finds, there will be a number. So I'm going to put my filter condition as greater than zero. So I'll explain once again once we see the results. But I'm going to close my parenthesis now and see what the results are. That Carolina, Carolina, Carolina. So every one of these matchup values they have the letter CAR. And that's because our formula was checking for the team selected value. The team selected is what? CAR. So let me just click on CHI, Chicago. So now it changed. And the team selected is what? CHI, Chicago. So clearly, this is dynamic. Based on the slicer selection, we are able to only bring the data we need, but it's still not sorted in a way that I would want. So first of all, I want to sort it by week. So I'm going to sort this, and at the end, I will do an index of 1 because the first column is the week column. I want to sort it by week. And then I want to sort it ascending. So I do another 1. Hit enter. Now I have order by week. Perfect. So this is the week. So when the user selects Chicago, the opponent for Chicago can be in the column E here or can be here. So it's not in one column that we can pick up the opponent for Chicago from. That is the catch. So here it is Green Bay in the first game. It's in column F. But then the second game, the opponent is Tampa Bay, which is in column E. This is what makes it a little bit tricky. So we need to write some formulas to extract the correct opponent. So the first thing I'm going to do is whether it's a home game or it could be a road game. So depending on that, whether we may say, is it versus this team or it's at the team. So maybe, well, let's just do opponent first. That might be easier. So the opponent would be As in Excel, as with anything, most of the things, there are many, many ways to do it. So I'm going to use a different technique than I've done before, which is I know that the matchup value will have Chicago, right? If I remove Chicago and the hyphen, I will get the opponent. Whether the opponent name is before the hyphen or after the hyphen, doesn't matter. I have to remove them. So, for example, Chicago hyphen Green Bay. Next one is Tampa Bay hyphen Chicago. So Chicago is in different places, but I want to remove Chicago and the hyphen, right? So I am going to use a technique for substitute, and I will, if I spell it right, then I'm going to use this text, and then first of all remove the text Chicago. So that I don't want to hard code it because I want to be dynamic. So I'm going to type in team selected. And then if I find team selected, then I will just replace it with nothing, right? So close parenthesis, hit OK. And yeah, so that should be OK. If I drag this, you will see that CHI has been removed. Fine, but I still have the um, let's see, the hyphen or the dash. So I will write another substitute on top of this. And this time I will say any hyphens to remove it. So what did I do by mistake? Once again, I didn't type substitute correctly. Okay. So I got it right this time. And now I have an opponent. Great. So that other part I wanted to do was to bring in whether it's an away game or a road game. And one way to do that would be if, for example, in the away game, so this is the third column is the away game. Let me go and take a look at it. Home and away and matchup, right? So I go back here. This is okay. This is home team, away team, and this is matchup. Now, if I know the away team, so if the away team equals our team selected, right? That means the it is being played at the opponent's location. So I will put that's a road game. So at comma. What if it's not? If it is not, then put versus. Let's try this, okay? And I'm sure that there'll be one case of a problem when there is a buy. So, for example, you see week 13, there is a buy. We need to handle that. But before we do that, let's take a look at whether it's working correctly. This is at Tampa Bay. Second game is at Tampa Bay because it's a road game. This one is at Kansas City. This one is Chicago, Denver, and then the home team is Chicago. So home game, it'll say VS for versus. When it is an away game, it'll say at. So that's working fine. The only thing is if it's a buy, what do you do? So I will go here and say if the away equals buy, then don't say anything. Just or you can say buy. I'm just going to leave it blank and then close parenthesis and apply this formula to all the cells. So now you have by with blank, and then otherwise you have this populated. So it is all good. Now let's do the logo because I think that that is one of the parts of making the visuals more appealing is to get the logos. So for the logo formula, I can go to the week schedule, which we did before, and I'm going to copy this formula, and then I will go back into our new thing, and then I will paste it. Now, the change that we want to make sure is the reference here should be to the opponent abbreviation, and you don't have to change anything else. You automatically get Green Bay, and you can extend this further. Now, when you have a buy, you have a problem. So what you need to do is if equals buy, then don't put any image, otherwise put this image. So that should take care of that problem. There you go. Okay, so now do we need all these columns in between? No, I can just right click and hide. And now it will say week one versus Green Bay, and we have the logo there as well. And if to add a little bit more to it, I can also bring in the name of the opponent. So in order to bring the name of the opponent, I can do a simple lookup, say X lookup, this abbreviation, and go to the one of these tables where we have the team description, right? So I'm looking up with the abbreviation, but pulling back the team name. Okay, there you have it. And if it is a buy, I think we'll still have a problem. Yes. So then similarly, we'll do, you can actually use within the XLOOKUP function itself, there is an option. If you don't find the value or if you don't find a matching thing, you can enter the default value. I will just put blank because I don't want any value to be entered. I cannot find anything. There we go. If you want buy, you can put buy as the last argument for the XLOOKUP. But I've done this. Let's just do a little bit of formatting here. I can make uh, this appear bigger, and let's say, and then the other thing we could do is to do some conditional formatting to do give a like a banded rows approach or a design. So that's very simple. I can select all these values, go to conditional formatting, new rule, use a formula, and this time I will say if is even function, open parenthesis, row of first cell is C12. So I'm going to type in C12, no dollar symbols, close my is even. So what this is doing is if the row is an even number row, then use this design, right? I can do a pattern, I can do a colors, but anyway, just do it as in a subtle way as possible so that it's not overpowering the visual. The other thing I would do is to make sure they're all aligned, centered like that. So we have a simple, nice, interactive visual to create a team selection, and you can see that team specific schedule. You'll always have 18 weeks, so that's why we kind of hard coded that 18. But if we want it to be more dynamic, we can kind of choose to make some choices accordingly. But there you have it. It's very, very easy, simple techniques. And how can we bring the division information? Because the final visual that we want is by the division. So, for example, there are 8 divisions, so it's AFC East, North, Southwest, NFC East, North, Southwest. So we have data on the team division table where we have the team abbreviation and then the division they belong to. But we want to make sure that this is connected to the standings data. Standings table has the team abbreviation and it has the win record, loss record, ties, and winning percentage. So this is the extremely important piece that we want, but we also want it by the division so we can group the teams together in the same division. So for the first thing, I will just do a division column here, and then I will be pulling information using a lookup function to say this team abbreviation, go to the team division table, and from that column, and then match it and give me back the division column value. I will close, and now I have the division as well. So now that I have everything into a single table, now I can easily create my output in a new sheet, and I'm going to call it as standings visual. And here we will start creating our final output. So in order to first do this, so I'm going to write down AFC, let's say East, okay? And then I'm going to do formula using filter function. And in this case, I'm going to go to the standings table, but I want this only for the teams where the division is AFC. Another catch here is that we don't have the abbreviation column here, which it's over here in column O. What we want extracted from here, it's actually in not together. So they are non-adjacent columns. So in order to pull that, so I'm going to use a different technique. Yeah, we will use the filter function, but first we have to do an index within the filter. And here I would say, go to the standings table, okay, and then we had a previous video where we explained how this works, but I will do a sequence and rows of standings table. So this basically pulls all the rows from the standings table, comma, which columns do I want from the standings table? This is where I can customize it. I will do a flower brackets, open the curly brackets, and then choose the number of the column. So second column is the win-loss record. So second is win, third is loss, but which column is team abbreviation? So if I had counted them correctly before, I would know exactly. So let's just do for now 2, 3, 4. Okay. So I want the second column, third column, fourth column. I also want the fifth column. I will close my curly brackets, and then if I close parentheses, I'm basically closing my index function. Now I can do a comma and then apply my filter condition. What is my filter condition? I want the division. So standings table division column should be equals to, go back to my sheet and I say, I click on this value. Okay. So I can just do D4. That should work. So let's close the filter function and hit and see what happens. You now have this information, but what we really want is this is win, loss, then tie, and then winning percent. This is what we want. Okay. So clearly, the first one I wanted to be the name of the team or the abbreviation of the team. Let's go back here. Which column is, so for example, 15th column is the team abbreviation. So I can go and change this to give me back 15th column and then give me all these things. That's it. So once again, we did a index function. We chose which columns we wanted. We chose the filter condition, and now we got this nice table of only AFC East teams. I could do a sort on it to make sure that it is sorted in the order that we want. Sort by the first column, which is alphabetical, if that's what you want, right? So if I do this, it will sort automatically by alphabetical. But if I wanted to sort it by the winning percentage, then I will do it by the last column. So this will be fifth column. So let me do that. And do I want it by ascending or descending? I want it by descending because I want the teams who have the highest to come up there, right? So I can do descending, and now this will switch. It was correctly ordered was because the standings table itself, this itself is ordered by the winning percentage, and that's why it looked fine. But in your case, if you don't control the raw data coming in and the order, you want to make sure that you do the sort so that you are safe in seeing that you're always providing the list sorted by the highest winning percentage. In your data, it could be highest values of some other measures, but the concept still applies. You want to make sure that you apply the sort if your raw data is not going to be reliably sorted. Okay, so now we have this, so I can just copy this and I'm going to paste in immediately following thing. And now this, I can change it to AFC North. Now let's see what happens. So you automatically get different teams. And that's because in our formula, we were pointing it to the cell above. And now that we changed the cell, it still works correctly. So I can go back here. This one, I can do it as AFC South. And then I will repeat it for AFC West. Again, if I really wanted to, I can write some more formulas to make even this dynamic. But I think the focus of this video is about you can extract the data from another table, applying some simple, conditions, pulling non-adjacent columns together, right? And also we'll be doing some conditional formatting stuff as well. So I'm gonna select everything go to the right side and then paste everything, we will get exactly the same thing, right? But I can just go and do a find and replace and say, wherever you find AFC, just replace with NFC. Replace all. There should be only four replacements, and that is correct. And again, this is because I know the data. We know what are the different divisions. I can safely do these type of transformations. So now I have all these tables. Now it's about just making it look better. And so I'm just going to start, formatting. So this is the standings. Apply. Okay, standings. So what I'm going to do is conditional formatting, new rule. And this is going to be a little bit different. So I'm going to use a length function, len. If the length of my column D value, so let's say D4, is greater than 3, that means it's not a team abbreviation, it's a section or a division. If that's the case, then apply a different background fill for the entire row, and the font could be different. Okay, so let's be bold, hit OK, and wow, this is exactly not what I want. What happened here? I should have seen, I should have entered. I'm selecting all these rows, so that looks good. Now here's the catch. We always want to lock the column D, because the D is where you will find the division name. So the division names are going to be greater than 3 characters. So look it in D column, right? Lock it, and then say, okay, apply. So now what happens is we have a really nice clean presentation of the conditional formatting applied only to the division headers. I want to do the same thing for the NFC on the right side as well. But before I do that, one more thing I would want to do on the AFC side is, what if it is we'll do the usual banded rows kind of design where it's a row of D4, and if it is an even numbered row, then fill it with the different pattern in background that's maybe very lightly visible. I can even do a blue colored pattern, let's say, and hit OK, hit apply. And I'll explain. Okay, so this is another often important thing to follow when we do the conditional formatting is in the when you selected the values and the applies to, should you need to make sure that it applies to all the cells we want. So I want it to be applied to D4 to H23. So I'm going to select all of them, apply. Now here's the catch. So you see that now as soon as we applied it, we lost the first one. And so I want to move this, the the darker background fill we appeared first, and then I want to stop applying after that is true. So this is where if you have multiple conditional formatting rules applied to the same cells, and if you want one to supersede or override the other, this is what you can do. So in this case, I am applying two rules to the same set of cells, but I'm just telling Excel, if you found this to be true, don't even go and evaluate for the next rule for that specific cell. So it's okay. Now, where is that design, the very, pattern that we tried to apply? I do not see that happening. So let's go and check the second rule again. And if is even row of D4, let's go and check again whether I applied the pattern. Yes, I did. And let's try something different to see if it becomes noticeable. Yes, so it is just very light in color. So if you like that, or if that's too dark, you can tone that down. And now it just blends with the color of my background of the canvas, so that's why it's not very easily visible. Okay. So this is once again, it's your personal preference from an aesthetic perspective. You can change it according to your needs, but the idea is to give it a little bit. I can do the color as, yeah, this should be more visible. That's what I will stick with for now. Okay, now I need to apply the similar things to the NFC side. So I'm gonna go and say conditional formatting, new rule, user formula, and if the length of J4, lock the J, greater than 3, then it is a header. So I want to apply the background fill, and then I will do a font of this color and then a bold. Okay, okay, there you have it. So we got it nicely done. And then I will do another conditional formatting. This time we will do the even rows of J4 and we will do the formatting as this and this. Okay, there you have it. I am missing the closing parenthesis. I've done that. And once again, the same thing. If you have two rules that apply, you want to make sure that you order them. And then I will say stop. If I don't say stop, both will get applied. So I'm going to hit stop with true and then okay. So now I have exactly what I want. That is it for this video. So we started from the standings table and then we had the team division table. We brought it together and then we created the visual step by step with very simple formulas, primarily the filter function. And then we did some conditional formatting to make it appear the way we want. And it's completely flexible, simple techniques to create the visuals in a more dynamic way. And also, as we saw in the previous videos about this topic with NFL data, we can do a lot of interactive visuals as well using this data. I look forward to hearing from you. Your suggestions, please post them in the comments section. If you have any suggestions for me to do for the next video, please let me know. I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you soon.